Have you ever been told you're too quiet? Maybe at a party, someone said, "You should talk more." Or during a meeting, your silence was mistaken for disinterest. But what if I told you that silence often speaks louder than words, and that quiet people, the ones who blend into the background, are often the ones who see the world most clearly? It's strange, isn't it? We live in a world that celebrates the loud, the confident, the expressive, the ones who fill the room with energy. Yet, beneath the surface, there's an entire universe inside the quiet ones. People whose silence isn't emptiness, but depth. This video is about them, the psychology of silence, and why quiet people are so deeply misunderstood. Picture this. You walk into a room full of chatter. People are laughing, voices overlapping like waves. In the corner, there's someone sitting quietly, observing, maybe smiling softly, not saying much. Most people don't notice them. But if you could peek inside their mind, you'd find a world that's wide awake, analyzing, feeling, reflecting. It's not that they have nothing to say. It's that they're waiting for the right moment, the right words, the right depth. Psychologists have studied this dynamic for decades. Silence, as it turns out, triggers discomfort in many people. When a conversation pauses, even for a few seconds, our brains register it as tension, a kind of social vacuum we feel pressured to fill. That's why silence is often mistaken for awkwardness. But for quiet people, silence isn't tension. It's space. Space to think, to feel, to breathe. Let's dive deeper. There are 3 powerful psychological reasons why quiet people are misunderstood. And each one reveals something profound, not just about silence, but about how we see each other. First, silence is often misinterpreted as shyness or lack of confidence. But that's not always true. In many cases, it's simply a different form of communication. A study from the University of Chicago found that introverts process information more deeply and slowly than extroverts. Their brains literally light up in different patterns, taking more time to evaluate, reflect, and form responses. So while one person speaks instantly, another may pause to think before replying. That pause, that silence, is the introvert's way of being precise. It's not fear, it's depth. Imagine this. 2 friends are talking about a personal problem. One immediately offers advice. The other just listens, nods, and stays silent for a moment. Who seems more distant? Most people might say the quiet one. But later, when that quiet friend finally speaks, their words cut deeper, more thoughtful, more accurate, because they didn't just hear the words, they heard the emotion beneath them. Silence, for them, is the bridge between what's said and what's meant. But here's where the misunderstanding begins. Society often equates talking with confidence. We praise the outspoken, the quick thinkers, the storytellers. We assume the ones who speak first are the ones who lead. Yet history tells a different story. Think of people like Albert Einstein, J.K. Rowling, or Rosa Parks. Each of them was described as quiet. But their silence wasn't weakness. It was focus. Einstein once said, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind." He knew that silence isn't emptiness. It's the birthplace of ideas. The second reason quiet people are misunderstood is because silence often makes others project their own insecurities. Here's what that means. When someone doesn't speak much, our minds try to fill in the blanks. We wonder, are they judging me? Do they not like me? Are they bored? In psychology, this is called the projection bias. We interpret other people's behavior through the lens of our own emotions. So when we feel uneasy with silence, we assume the other person is the cause. But in truth, it's our discomfort with stillness that speaks the loudest. Think about the last time you were with someone who didn't talk much. Did you start over-explaining? Trying harder to keep the conversation alive? That's projection in action, your brain trying to break the silence because it feels exposed in it. Quiet people, on the other hand, are often comfortable with that space. They're not in a rush to fill it. To them, silence is honesty. It's the absence of pretense. It's where connection actually deepens. But because most people aren't used to that level of quiet, they misread it. They see calmness and assume coldness. They see thoughtfulness and assume distance. It's a beautiful paradox. The quieter someone is, the more people invent stories about them. The third reason quiet people are misunderstood comes down to energy and how we recharge it. Psychologists call it introversion versus extroversion, but it's not about how social you are. It's about where your energy comes from. Extroverts gain energy by being around people, by engaging, talking, sharing. Introverts, however, gain energy by being alone, by reflecting, reading, walking, thinking. It's not that they dislike people. It's that constant stimulation drains them. So when a quiet person leaves a social event early, people might think they're antisocial or uninterested. But really, they're just refilling their battery. They've reached their social limit, and retreating into silence isn't withdrawal. It's recovery. Imagine the mind as a cup. For extroverts, talking fills the cup. For introverts, it empties it. Silence is how they refill. And when that quiet person comes back, after some time alone, they're more centered, more insightful, more genuine. Because silence isn't their weakness. It's their power source. But there's a hidden twist to all of this, one that most people never realize. Silence doesn't just shape how we're perceived. It shapes who we become. When you spend more time in quiet, you start to notice things others miss. You hear the rhythm of people's speech, the hesitation in their tone, the unspoken emotions behind their words. You develop what psychologists call high sensitivity, an ability to pick up subtle cues that others overlook. It's a kind of emotional radar, and that radar gives quiet people an edge in creativity, empathy, and wisdom. They see patterns before others do. They sense moods before they're expressed. They read between the lines, not just of language, but of life. But here's the paradox. Because they see so much, they often say less. And because they say less, people assume they don't see much. It's the quiet person's curse, to understand deeply, but to be misunderstood constantly. Let's pause for a second and reflect. When was the last time you truly listened, not to respond, but just to understand? When was the last time you allowed silence to linger in a conversation without rushing to fill it? That's where connection hides, in the stillness between words. Silence is uncomfortable because it reveals truth. When words stop, all that's left is presence. And presence can be confronting. It strips away performance. It leaves us vulnerable. But that's also where authenticity lives. So the next time you meet someone quiet, don't mistake their silence for absence. It might be the loudest kind of presence there is. Let's go even deeper, into the psychology of why silence feels so powerful. In neuroscience, there's something called the default mode network, a set of brain regions that activate when you're not focused on the outside world. It's the part of your mind that comes alive during daydreaming, reflection, or quiet thinking. Studies show that silence helps this network thrive, leading to higher creativity, stronger memory, and deeper emotional processing. In one experiment, researchers exposed mice to 2 hours of silence per day. They found that the silence actually generated new brain cells in the hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning and emotion. Now imagine that in human terms, every moment of quiet may literally be growing your mind. This is why the world's greatest thinkers, artists, and leaders often seek solitude. Because in silence, the noise of the world fades, and the signal of your own thoughts becomes clear. But in a world that's constantly loud, with endless notifications, reels, and opinions, silence is almost rebellious. It's the one thing you can't scroll past. When you choose silence, you're stepping out of the crowd. You're saying, I don't need to fill every moment. I want to feel it. And that's terrifying to some people. Because silence forces you to face yourself. To confront your emotions, your fears, your thoughts. That's why most people avoid it. They mistake distraction for peace. But quiet people, they've learned to live inside that stillness. They've made peace with their inner noise. There's an old saying, still waters run deep, and that couldn't be more true. Quiet people might not say much, but when they do, it's usually worth listening to. because they've thought about it, really thought about it. Their silence has distilled truth. Let's take an example. A group of friends are debating something, maybe a life decision like whether to quit a job or end a relationship. Everyone speaks their mind quickly, passionately. The quiet one listens, observing all sides. And then, after a long pause, they speak just one or two sentences. And suddenly, the whole room goes quiet, because their words hit the core. Not rehearsed, not loud, but true. That's the power of silence turned into speech. It's not frequent, but it's potent. But if you're a quiet person watching this, here's something important to remember. Your silence isn't something to fix. It's something to understand. You don't owe the world constant conversation. You owe it your authenticity. And sometimes, authenticity is silent. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You just need to be real when you do speak. Because when quiet people talk, people listen, precisely because it's rare. So embrace your pauses. Embrace the moments when you don't have the perfect reply. Those are the moments that make space for meaning. And if you're not a quiet person, if you're someone who fills the silence, here's your reminder too. Silence doesn't mean rejection. It doesn't mean disinterest. Sometimes it's just someone thinking deeply. Sometimes it's respect. Sometimes it's love, expressed without noise. So the next time someone falls silent in your company, don't rush to fix it. Let it breathe. Because maybe, in that silence, something beautiful is happening, understanding. Now, here's the paradox, the twist. The very thing that makes quiet people misunderstood is also what makes them magnetic. You see, silence is mysterious, and mystery attracts attention. When you don't reveal everything about yourself, you create intrigue. People lean in. They wonder what you're thinking. It's the psychology of curiosity. We're drawn to what we can't easily explain. So the quiet person, the one sitting in the back of the room observing quietly, often ends up being the one everyone remembers later. Not because they said the most, but because they said the least yet felt the most. In a world obsessed with being seen, the quiet ones have mastered the art of being felt. So what can we take away from all this? First, silence is not a weakness. It's a form of strength. It shows restraint, depth, and presence. Second, don't confuse quietness with disinterest. Sometimes, silence is how someone listens best. And third, learn to sit with silence. Because in that stillness, you'll start to hear your own mind again. You'll notice things that noise always drowns out, like intuition, clarity, and truth. Maybe that's why so many ancient philosophies, from Buddhism to Stoicism, place silence at the heart of wisdom. Because to know yourself, you must first be quiet enough to listen. And when you do, the world doesn't become louder. It becomes clearer. So next time someone calls you quiet, smile a little. Because what they really mean is you're listening when others aren't. You're observing what others miss. You're living in a world that can't stop talking, but you've learned the power of not needing to. In the next video, we'll explore why the brain craves solitude and how spending time alone can actually make you more emotionally intelligent. If you found this eye-opening, subscribe for more calm, insightful tales of the mind. Because sometimes, the loudest truths are found in silence.